In Ghost of Tsushima Legends, you and up to 3 other friends band together to take on the role of ghosts. Together you'll play co-op missions inspired by Japanese folktales and mythology in this action-packed mode. So I'm Darcblade with a beginner's guide to Ghost of Tsushima Legends. Now in this video I'm going to break down various aspects of the mode to help newcomers to the game better understand what is going on. So the first aspect of this beginner guide is what is Legends? Well, Ghost of Tsushima Legends is a co-op mode added to the game. It's completely free for players who own Ghost of Tsushima, and it's entirely separate from the main campaign. You and up to 3 other players take on various missions that are told like stories, with a narrator giving you a heads up on what's going on, as well as telling the story itself. There's a huge emphasis on cooperative combat and action with this mode. But before you dive into the mode, you have to know about the various classes in the game. There are 4 classes. There's the Samurai, which is focused more on straight up combat. Imagine these being the tanks and warriors of the game. There's the Hunter, which is all about archery and being able to deal damage to opponents from afar. Whilst yes, it can still take part in close combat, it excels at taking down enemies with the bow. The Ronin, which functions more like a support character, having access to various heals and buffs for you and your allies. And there's the Assassin, which is your stealth character, your rogue character, who is the best at performing assassinations and moving around the battlefield unnoticed. When you first start the game you can only pick one of them, but as you level up each of them you'll unlock the others. Each one of them is unique in their own right and plays slightly differently, so there's something for everyone's playstyle. Now, once you have your character, what mode do you play? Well, there are various modes in Ghost of Tsushima Legends. The main 2 are story and survival. Story missions are 2-player mode that has players taking on various missions that are heavily story based. The narrator will guide you through these missions, and they tend to be divided into 3 acts, with each act getting progressively harder. On the flip side, there's survival mode, which is a straightforward horde-based mode where you have to survive waves of enemies coming at you over and over again. This though can be up to 4 players. Lastly, there are raids, which are akin to story missions but will have up to 4 players in them instead of just the 2-player missions found in the normal story missions. These will be harder and require a lot of communication in order to successfully complete. Basically they'll be the hardest challenge that Legends has going for it. But when you selected your mode you'll be prompted to select a difficulty. Now there are 4 difficulties in the game, although some of them are kind of restrictive. Normally you'll have to contend with bronze, silver and gold missions. Each of these increase in difficulty, but as a result will give you better rewards. There is also a nightmare difficulty, which is the hardest, which is locked behind weekly challenges as well as the raid. But once you're ready, you've got a party together, whether it be with friends or randoms, you've selected your class, you've got your equipment ready, it's time to head off onto the mission. Now the gameplay of Legends functions very similar to the single player of Ghost of Tsushima. You're able to use stealth to take out opponents quietly, or you can go in guns a-blazing, well, swords a-blazing. However, combat can be tough and visceral. Timing is key when it comes to parrying attacks, and sometimes you can be overwhelmed with opponents, to which you need to use the abilities available to your classes. These include class abilities, perks and ultimate abilities that allow you to take on groups of opponents or tougher opponents a little bit more easily. You can also make use of the terrain, whether it's getting to a high vantage point or even using the environment against your enemies. Knowing your surroundings can definitely help when completing missions. Now when it comes to taking on missions, you have to be aware of your health. You can lose health very quickly in Ghost of Tsushima Legends, but there are ways to replenish it. The obvious way is to hit the healing drums scattered around the map. Once struck, these will emit a healing wave that will heal any ghost within its radius. Alternatively, there are offerings scattered around the map. These can be used to refill your ammunition, so your arrows, poison darts and such, but they also grant you a small amount of health when you use them. Lastly, there's equipment, as well as buffs found on certain characters and classes that allow you to heal your allies or yourself and keep everyone in the fight. Now, during certain missions, especially when you increase the difficulty, you'll have to contend with certain buffs and debuffs found on not only yourself but the enemies. There'll be times where you have to make use of certain powers borrowed from the kami, which boils down to certain enemies will have a coloured aura around them, and you'll have to go to these little altars and get the corresponding colour in order to deal sufficient damage to that enemy. On top of that, enemies can have poison auras which will poison ghosts or be able to set you alight. So learning the buffs and debuffs is definitely vital, especially when taking on the harder difficulties. Now when it comes to Ghost of Tsushima Legends, there are a variety of enemies you'll have to face, from the Mongols, to Ronin, to Pirates, to Oni. These all range in difficulty and can be a challenge. Each one tends to function a little bit differently as well. So for example, you have shielded enemies which are able to block attacks, you have enemies with spears that have long reaches to their attacks, you have magical users, and archers. Learning how to tackle each one of them will be key to victory. However, a lot of this will be learnt from playing the single player of Ghost of Tsushima. But what do you get for completing missions? Well, it's all about gear. For completing missions, you'll get gear as well as various currency that is used to upgrade the gear and your classes. Now the gear comes in various formats akin to other RPGs, so you'll have common items which are grey, uncommon items which are green, rare items which are blue, epic items which are purple, and legendary items which are yellow. Finding them and equipping them on your ghosts will enhance your ghost's capabilities and more, so always try to build up a decent collection of gear. And lastly, when it comes to this beginner's guide, is you need to know about ki. Ki is indicated in the top left of the screen, and it's basically akin to a power level found in other games like Destiny. The higher the ki, the more damage you can deal and the more damage you can receive. Basically, it's essential for taking on the harder difficulties. In fact, some of the harder difficulties are actually locked until you reach a certain ki level. But how do you increase your ki? Well, this is all to do with your gear. As you go through missions and get gear, there'll be a ki number found on the gear which will increase your ki level. On top of that, completing dailies and using the currencies you earn from missions, you can upgrade your gear, which will also increase its ki level. So there's a natural progression path as you go through the game, completing missions, getting gear, which will upgrade your ki, which will allow you to do harder missions, and the cycle repeats until you get to the point where you can do the toughest challenges in the game. But there we have it, those are the beginner points I can give to anyone who's interested in getting into Ghost of Tsushima Legends. To be honest, it's a fun co-op experience. Whether you're playing story missions with just you and a partner, or you're doing the survival missions with up to 4 players. It's fun, entertaining, and if you love the gameplay of Ghost of Tsushima, this is a great mode to play. But of course, these are just beginner tips. There are probably more advanced ones out there, so if you have any more tips for players out there, leave a comment down below. I'll also be bringing you class guides as well to the 4 classes in Ghost of Tsushima Legends as well as we go forward. So until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing you a beginner's guide to Ghost of Tsushima Legends. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.